Hi friends, my journey in this fountain pen world till now had all been about different pens and experience with different kind of nibs. But then the tipping of the nibs had usually been the simple rounded ones. I started experiencing nibs with a bit of flex. I had a Waterman 52. Then I had a stub, a Yovo stub. And then I chanced upon this lovely this lovely pen, Montblanc Meisterstück, and this one is 146 with oblique broad nib, and it's been phenomenal. I've really loved writing with this pen for quite some time now, and I thought I'd just share my experiences with you on an oblique broad nib and the writing sample and the way this beauty writes. Um, you'd be knowing about the different types of tips of the nibs and the stubs, obliques. So I won't go into details of those. I'll just focus on how to best utilize an oblique broad nib, or for that matter an oblique nib, so to get the best writing experience out of this. Um, I've got a Waterman Carine, one of my other favorite pens, and this one writes. This is a medium nib, but writes somewhat like a broad nib. So I'll just put a writing sample of this first before I take up my oblique broad. I've inked it with Montblanc Lucky Orange. So the line variation in, I think it's dried up a bit. Yep. That much should work for a reference scale. Haven't used it for quite some time now. And this one is oblique broad. It's this is a pre 1990 pen. It's been inscribed West Germany. I got it off an eBay auction, and otherwise it's not mentioned anywhere on the nib. There was no reference to it being a broad nib, but I presume that the way it writes it should be an oblique broad. I think it's not been custom ground, and it was pre-made that way. Doesn't seem like it has been done after the purchase has been made by the previous buyer. So how this writes? Let me start off here. So there are four things which I would like to mention before I start writing with this pen. With the oblique broad, as is with the usual pens, you have to hold them just simply in a tripod grip. With a stub or with the architect grind, you may have to juggle up your angle, the slant angle. But with an oblique nib, because you have to put the slant just right at the paper, the rotation also is important. So unless and until the pen has been put at the right angle, you won't get that particular line variation. It may start writing like a stub pen, and that too with a bit of scratchiness. So one thing is to hold the pen at the right slant and at the right angle to get the oblique lines. Secondly, the pen and the ink and the paper should be conducive to this. Why I'm saying the ink? Because if you're writing with the oblique broad and the ink is a kind of a non-shading one, you may end up with the lines which would look like that being made by a sketch pen. I'll show you the writing sections later on, the writing samples which I did with some other inks, and they sometimes feel like it's been scribbled with a sketch pen. I'm not not a good thing for me. So a bit of shading of the ink is very desirable in this case. Thirdly, the angle changes. So the pressures, the muscles which are at play with a oblique pen are pretty different. So you may get tired very soon if you haven't had the habit of writing with a broad. So I don't think you can write more than a page without cramping your fingers. So this, if you have to write with oblique broad for a long writing thing, then I think you'll have to get used to this. I guess that's that. Consumes a lot of ink, so these pens are better fitted on either a piston filler, these nibs on a piston filler, or with the ink cartridge with the ink capacity of the pen, which is pretty sufficient to keep feeding with this amount of ink that drains out of this pen. Enough of talking. So I would just twist the pen slightly to get the oblique line. Yep. So I didn't have a quote to put. I just thought of writing something, and I'd come up with this. How does this pen write? Well, there you have a bit of writing sample, and you see that with the oblique pen, the line variation is seen in the oblique flows. So whatever downstrokes you see, they come out broad, and the oblique strokes up come out. The oblique strokes come out thin. Gives a very good, very pleasant writing. Very pleasant handwriting with this. I haven't had much of a comment or a compliment on my writing as much, because I think my writing is proportionate. It's pretty legible. But since I've started writing with the broad, it started to become more noticeable to the patients when I see them. So started to get more and more compliments on this. It hasn't changed my way of writing much, but then the word formation with this particular nib has come out pretty well if I compare it with the normal pen. Another small writing sample, the usual one. Again, you see that the oblique strokes upward become a bit thinner than the strokes which come down because of the oblique nib. I really like the way this particular pen writes. It's very wet and it's ultra smooth. You can sometimes find treasure with pre-owned pens, and with this particular oblique nib, it's a gem. It's really a different kind of experience. So with this, I come to the end of this particular video. I hope you like this one, and I wish you keep experimenting with different nibs and different inks. This particular one is the usual which I do. a combination of a private reserve Naples blue and a diamond soft mint. So there you go. Happy doodling and keep writing.